Title: The Man Who Vanished 60 Years Ago and Returned for Revenge. Imagine this. A man disappears without a trace from a dusty little town in New Mexico. No body, no clues, just gone. For 60 years, his name became nothing more than a whisper, a cautionary tale told to scare kids into coming home before dark. But then, on one quiet summer night, he came back, and what happened next would shake the entire town to its core. Tonight, we're diving into one of the strangest cases you've ever heard. The man who vanished 60 years ago and returned for revenge. The last night of Elias Romero, 1963. The sun was setting behind the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, staining the desert sky with streaks of red and orange. The air smelled of dry earth and mesquite smoke. Elias Romero wiped the sweat from his brow as he closed the gate to the cattle pen. It had been a long day, and he was looking forward to a cold beer and a quiet evening with his wife, Maria. He didn't know it yet, but this would be the last sunset he'd see as a free man. Elias had just stepped onto the porch when his neighbor, old Tomas, rode up on a horse, face pale. "Elias," he said out of breath, "they found Carlos Vega, dead." Out by the arroyo, Elias froze. Carlos Vega was the sheriff's brother and his oldest rival. They'd fought over land, water rights, even over Maria once, back when they were young men. But murder? Number. Elias wasn't a killer. "People are saying it was you," Tomas continued. "The sheriff's gathering men right now. You need to go, mijo. You need to go now." Maria stepped onto the porch, holding their little boy, Gabriel, on her hip. Her face drained of color as she heard the words. "They'll kill you before you can explain," she whispered. Elias grabbed his journal from the table, scribbling a quick note. "I didn't do this. God help me." He tucked it under a loose floorboard. Moments later, he heard the sound of horses in the distance. The posse was coming. "Go through the back," Maria urged, tears streaming down her face. "Head for the old mine road. I'll stall them." Elias kissed her and Gabriel one last time. Then he ran. By the time the sheriff and his men arrived, Elias was gone. The search lasted through the night, but the desert swallowed him whole. All that remained of him were rumors, fear, and the mark of a man who had been wronged. The curse of Las Piedras. At first, the town of Las Piedras tried to move on. Carlos Vega was buried with full honors. The sheriff stood tall at the funeral, and the posse claimed they chased Elias halfway to Mexico before losing his trail. But whispers began immediately. Some swore they saw Elias's shadow near the canyon. Others claimed their cattle went missing within days of his disappearance. The Romero ranch sat empty. Maria packed up what little she could carry and left with Gabriel under the cover of darkness. The house fell into ruin, the wind tearing at the shutters until it became a haunted silhouette against the horizon. Strange things started happening over the years. In 1971, a fire swept through the Vega family barn on the anniversary of Carlos's death. No culprit was ever found. In 1980, a ranch hand swore he heard a man crying near the arroyo, only to find no footprints in the sand. Kids dared each other to sneak onto the old Romero ranch at night. Some came back claiming they'd seen lantern light moving in the windows. Others never made it past the fence line, too spooked by the feeling of being watched. Locals started calling it La Maldición de Romero, the Romero curse. By the mid-1980s, even the sheriff admitted privately that the night Elias vanished had been a mistake. His deputy recalled hearing him whisper before his death, "I should have listened to him." God forgive me. Every few years, someone would claim to have spotted Elias himself, unchanged, walking along the dusty road at dusk. The sightings were always brief, and no one could prove it, but the legend grew stronger. By the time the 2000s rolled around, Elias Romero was no longer just a man who had disappeared. He had become the town's ghost, an omen, a story parents used to keep their children close to home after dark. And then, 60 years after that last sunset, he came back. The Return, 2023. It happened on a Tuesday evening, just as the summer sun was melting behind the mountains. The town was quiet, too quiet. Most of the tourists had gone home for the season, leaving Las Piedras with its usual cast of locals, the bartender at El Coyote, the old men playing dominoes outside the gas station, and Sheriff Dana Vega catching up on paperwork. The first person to see him was Rosa, the waitress at the diner. She swore later that the moment he stepped through the door, the room went cold. He looked like Elias Romero, the same sharp cheekbones, the same piercing eyes, the same way of standing like the ground beneath him belonged to him. But this man was no ghost. He looked 40 to 50 at the most. Elias, if he were still alive, would have been pushing 80. "Coffee," he said simply, his voice low and steady. Rosa couldn't move for a moment. "What? What's your name?" she asked. "Mateo," he replied. Word spread fast. By the next morning, half the town had heard about the stranger who looked just like the man who'd haunted their nightmares. Some crossed the street to avoid him. Others followed him from a distance, whispering. The old-timers fell silent when he walked by. 2 days later, Mateo walked into the sheriff's office. Sheriff Dana Vega, granddaughter of the very man who had hunted Elias, looked up from her desk and nearly dropped her pen. Mateo placed a small, weathered object on her desk. It was a pocket watch. She knew it instantly. It had belonged to her great-uncle Carlos, the one who had been murdered all those years ago. Mateo didn't wait for questions. "Dig up the truth," he said softly. "You owe it to him. And to me." Then he turned and walked out, leaving Dana staring at the watch, her heart pounding. That night, as a storm rolled over the desert, the past began to claw its way back to the surface. The investigation reopens. Sheriff Dana Vega sat in her office long after Mateo left, staring at the pocket watch. Its glass face was cracked, but it still ticked faintly, as though time itself had been waiting for this moment. By morning, she had reopened the case file. The dusty manila folder still smelled faintly of smoke and desert sand. The photos inside showed a younger Carlos Vega lying in the arroyo, the blood dried black in the harsh sun. There had never been enough evidence to convict Elias, but the town hadn't needed evidence back then. Dana started interviewing the oldest residents of Las Piedras. Some refused to talk. Others spoke in hushed tones, glancing over their shoulders as if afraid Elias himself might be listening. Then things took a darker turn. 3 days after the investigation reopened, the body of Santiago Morales, one of the last surviving posse members, was found in his barn. No sign of forced entry, no robbery. Just Santiago, sitting upright against a hay bale, eyes open, expression frozen in terror. On the floor next to him was a single object, an old silver spur with the initials ER scratched into it. The town went into a panic. Some blamed Mateo immediately, whispering that Elias's blood had come back to finish what he started. Others said it was a sign that the Romero curse was real, and that digging into the past had angered something that should have been left alone. At Santiago's funeral, Mateo stood at the edge of the crowd, silent and unmoving. His presence made the mourners shift nervously. Donna approached him, heart pounding. "Was this you?" she asked quietly. Mateo didn't answer right away. His gaze stayed fixed on the coffin being lowered into the ground. "They all knew," he said finally, voice low and calm. "Every last one of them. They let my grandfather bleed in the dirt while they drank whiskey to celebrate." Dana felt a chill run through her. "If you're here for justice, you let me handle this my way. If you're here for revenge..." Mateo turned to her then, and for a moment she swore she saw Elias's face in his. "Revenge is the only justice left," he said. That night, the second body dropped. Ramon Chavez, another old posse member, was found in his truck, headlights still on, parked outside the abandoned Romero ranch. This time there was no spur, just a note pinned to the steering wheel. One by one, the message was clear. The past was coming due. The truth about Elias Dana Vega couldn't sleep. The case file was spread across her kitchen table, the pages yellow and brittle with age. At the bottom of the stack, hidden beneath a photo of the old Romero ranch, she found something she had never noticed before. A reference to a box of personal effects taken from the ranch in 1963 and logged as evidence. The next morning, she drove to the county archives and asked the clerk to retrieve the box. It was covered in dust, the tape brittle. Inside were Elias's boots, a hat, a small leather journal, and a blood-stained shirt. Dana sat down in the dim light and began reading the journal. The entries painted a picture of a man terrified, but determined to survive. Elias had hidden in the mountains for weeks after the posse came for him, living off cactus water and whatever rabbits he could snare. He wrote of hearing the search parties pass by and of fighting the urge to go home. The later entries grew darker. Elias wrote about discovering that Carlos Vega had been killed by one of his own drunken companions during a fight, but by then, the sheriff needed a scapegoat, and Elias was perfect. The journal ended abruptly, but there was a final note tucked in the back. If my bloodline survives, they will clear my name. One day the truth will come back to Las Piedras. Dana sat back, heart pounding. This was the proof Elias had never had the chance to show. She photographed every page, determined to bring the truth to light. But when she left the archives, she found Mateo waiting by her truck. "You found it, didn't you?" he said quietly. Dana nodded. "This proves your grandfather didn't kill Carlos Vega. It proves the sheriff covered it up," Mateo's jaw clenched. "Then you know why I can't stop. Those men took everything from him, from us. My father grew up without him. My family was shamed for generations. They all lived their lives like nothing happened." Dana took a step closer. "Mateo, if you go through with this, it doesn't clear your grandfather's name. It just proves them right. Let me release the truth. Let the town see what really happened." For a moment, Mateo looked torn, but then his face hardened. "The truth doesn't scare them," he said. "Fear does." That night, the church bell rang again, 3 times this time, and when dawn came, another member of the old posse was found dead. The town was out of time. The final confrontation. The town was paralyzed by fear. No one walked the streets after dark, and families kept guns loaded by their doors. Donna knew it would end with blood unless she stopped Mateo herself. She tracked him to the abandoned Romero ranch under the light of a half moon. The wind rattled the windows, and the creak of the barn door sounded like a warning. Inside, Mateo stood at the old dining table, laying out photographs of the men who had hunted his grandfather. Only 2 were left alive. One of them, the retired sheriff, Hector Vega, Dana's own uncle. "It ends tonight," Dana said, stepping into the room. Mateo turned, calm but wild-eyed. "Then stand aside." "You've proved your point," Dana said. "Everyone in this town is afraid. But fear isn't justice. It's just another curse." For a long moment, they stared at each other, the weight of 60 years pressing down on them. Finally, Dana set the journal on the table. "This clears Elias's name," she said. "I'll make it public. The whole state will know he was innocent. But if you kill them, this journal becomes nothing but a relic of a madman's family feud." Mateo's breathing slowed. He looked at the journal, then at Dana, then at the photos. At last, he gathered them up and tossed them into the cold fireplace. "I'll go," he said, "but this town will never forget me." He walked past Dana into the night. By morning, his truck was gone, leaving only tire tracks heading toward the highway. But weeks later, Hector Vega's house mysteriously burned down. No one saw who did it, no one heard a truck, and in the ashes, investigators found a single unburned pocket watch, still ticking. The message was clear. Mateo might have left Las Piedras, but his vengeance was far from over. And just like that, the man who carried 60 years of pain vanished into the desert, leaving behind truth, fear, and a town forever changed. But then came the fire and the pocket watch. Was Mateo gone, or is he still out there, waiting for the last name on his list? If you want more stories like this, dark, mysterious, and haunting, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join me next time on the Pulse of Pulse Truth as we uncover another chilling tale. Because sometimes the past doesn't just refuse to stay buried. Sometimes it comes back to finish what it started. See you in my next post. Stay active.
Thank you for watching.